This episode is going to be all about my spiritual journey and how I came to a place of finally letting go of what I thought was reality and really starting to open up to these spiritual principles, universal laws, and everything else that has helped me along this journey of evolution. I'm also going to touch base on this idea of spiritual ego because I see this a lot in terms of the spiritual space where there's still this heavy identification with the ego. Now, I don't mean to trigger anybody in a negative way. However, I think that our triggers are our teachers. So if there's noticing of being triggered, it's something that one could dive in and really look within yourself and see why you are being triggered when I talk about ego or talk about spiritual ego. Nevertheless, I come from a place of love and unconditional understanding and support because I've been there, where once I started to open up to the possibility that life is more than this 3D reality and that we are actually spirit, we are oneness, we are part of this divine creation of God, of the universe, however you want to define it. I also started to latch onto beliefs, ideas, anything that resonated with my soul. But also, I started to realize that even those weren't enough, okay? And latching onto ideas that describe that oneness is not conducive to really understanding at the end of the day who you are and letting go of the ego. So this is how you can experience hierarchies and egoic behavior and even a sense of unlove and feeling unsupported by friends and family who may be in a spiritual space but also are operating from still this egoic mind. So that's what this episode's about. It's about my spiritual healing journey, actually what brought me to this space of enough is enough. And then we're going to talk a little bit about the ego. We'll probably talk about this in another episode because I really want to just really help people disidentify with the ego so strongly and understand that we are not our minds, we are not our egos, and being able to decipher when it is our ego that's trying to run the show and when it is our higher self that's trying to pull through with the ancient wisdom, with the light, with the oneness, with the divine, but our ego is the one that gets in the way and doles our divinity out, which it can never do that, by the way. It can only give us the perception of doing that. But 100%, we'll have to talk about that another time. So let's get started on my spiritual journey, what got me to this point of quote unquote awakening and the ego. Hey, welcome to another episode of the You Are Limitless podcast. I'm your host, Madam Chiko, coming to you from the holistic wellness space as a spiritual transformational life coach. And I thank you for joining me here on another episode on YALL. And if you're just not tuning in, I'm so glad to have you with me on my journey and having me a part of yours. This is my way of bringing psychology, metaphysical concepts, universal law, as well as my own experience of extreme limitations due to abuse, drug abuse, and being a justice impacted individual into the light so that we can let go of the things that don't serve us and start to incorporate more of our truth. And so there are a lot of people who are in physicality in this moment that really don't think that spirituality or understanding our divine oneness matters. But my experience is I've experienced life of extreme limitations and also experienced this concept of do running businesses and doing it from a cup that was pretty much empty. And yes, I would fill it in with all these extravagant vacations and buying things left and right. I love shopping. But at the end of the day, I realized that none of that mattered. All of these external things are great, and this is not to invalidate it, but none of that mattered in terms of showing me who I really am. And it actually came to me during a crossroads period, a dark night of the soul. And we'll start there with my spiritual journey because I feel like it started a very long time ago where I've gotten signs as a kid that what I'm experiencing, there's going to be a point to it all eventually. I don't know how, but eventually there's going to be some type of lesson, or I'm going to use this to help people. But what was really the pivoting moment where I was like, this is not it. And I've had a few, and I could talk about a few in the past where I was in jail actually, and I'm coaching people in jail as a jailhouse lawyer, or even in rehab, where I had these moments that I can't really describe even now. Well, I can better as I get more equipped with my vocabulary to try and pinpoint these spiritual concepts where language really cannot do justice in understanding this oneness that we are. We're very limited vocabulary wise. But it was actually, I was on drugs for a very long time. And for some people, they would classify me as a functioning drug addict until I wasn't. And one of the ways that I decided I was going to find a way to get clean was through academia. This is why I'm so grateful for the academic system. It kind of gets talked negatively about in a lot of entrepreneurship communities and the spiritual community. I'm grateful for what it did for me and how I'm using these systems in order to bring consciousness into these fields that so desperately need it, that are supposed to be humanitarian, yet it's the egoic mind that creates the problems that man experiences today. Well, a few years ago, and I'm so grateful this is a few years ago, I reached a new low that I never thought I would reach. And this happened when I was robbed. I was in jail, and I had a friend, one of my friends from high school, but she also got addicted to heavy drugs as well. And her wife, they were married. They were one of those people back in 2015, whenever gay marriage was legalized, that they just got married after a few months of knowing each other. And that was probably not a wise move on their part because they were very much so not compatible. Nevertheless, I loved them to death, and I still love them. And one of them actually got clean a few years later, and I'm really proud of her today. She got divorced from this friend, my high school friend. And my high school friend, she's probably still struggling out there. So if you do hear this, just know that I love you so much. So they actually broke into my apartment and stole a bunch of my stuff, thousands of dollars worth of items, thousands of dollars in cash. And they didn't feed my dogs. I mean, they fed my dogs, but they didn't walk my dogs. And that is what really hurt me. And I caught them on camera. They forgot. See, whenever you're on drugs, you're not thinking. They forgot that I had cameras posted up at my house. And so 17 minutes in, after watching, they realized that the cameras were up. And so they unplugged my cameras. Well, seeing that level of betrayal. And in the drug world, it's very normal to be betrayed by your closest of friends. But I didn't really experience that because I, to some degree, held some level of morals while I was on drugs. There were many things that I was doing that was kind of like off the wall and unacceptable. But at the same time, I was like, don't steal from your friends, don't cheat. There were things that you did, or at least that I held really firmly in terms of self-integrity. And we're going to have an episode on self-integrity here in the near future. But it was really important for me to hold that level of self-integrity because we're already doing things that are unacceptable. Don't make it worse. And I always knew that eventually I would stop doing these hard drugs. So it really hurt me to see on camera that my own friends that I trusted with everything I've known since before we even did drugs, when we were like 15, 16, and this is what they did to me. That was it. That was what broke me. It wasn't the jail stints that got me clean. It wasn't probation. It wasn't rehab. It wasn't anything. It was the idea of being betrayed by my closest friends that told me I'm done. And that's what really started the awakening process. Like I slowly started to awaken back into my former version of myself because the drugs numbed me out. So now that I was getting clean, everything that I experienced from childhood started to come back. Everything. And it hit me like a brick wall. It broke me. I went to therapists, like many, to seek relief. And I got that. but I knew that there was something else that was missing. I was full of shame, I was full of guilt, and I have episodes on shame and guilt. I'm actually going to create another episode on it, a part 2, because I think that shame and guilt is so heavily embedded into our society as something that we must feel in order to grow, in order to remedy a harm. But there are better ways to do that, and I can't wait to share more about it as I progress and evolve and continue to evolve, because I'm never fully done evolving. And I don't think anybody else can be. And if you think that you are blocking your blessings of learning more about yourself, and you might get a rude awakening somehow, whether it's through a teacher you find, plant medicine, like Mother Aya will awaken your ass up. So I'm just going to put that out there. But I was seeking relief and I could not find it. But I knew that I was now more than this little me. And that's what brought me to all these different teachers. I got into a relationship where I was introduced to a channeler. And that was really cool because he saw that I was truly just, banging my head up against the wall with my own belief systems. And he was like, enough is enough. And so he bought me some videos, and I was just flabbergasted at this idea of the manifestation and how backwards we have it, of universal laws, what karma really means, how everything is here and now, the stories that we're creating, the law of repulsion, attraction, synchronicities, and what all of that meant. And guess what? We're going to talk all about this, because whether you believe in spiritual concepts or not, that's not the point. You're going to experience this as a facet of creation. And that's something that it's just a given. Quantum physics understands this. Science is catching up to it. Religion already understands this. Spirituality understands this. And so I finally was starting to get the point that this is all happening regardless, and it's about being conscious to what is happening. That conscious awareness that's going to bring us to victory. And so that's what caused me to wake up, okay, is the trauma. And trauma is a really good, honestly, if you look at trauma as a way to awaken to your truth, then what trauma is there? I understand that what I went through as a child was very traumatic, but I don't identify as a person having experiencing trauma, because it has helped me come into this space of knowing more of who I am and my purpose, and stepping into that as a coach, as a leader, as a law student, going to law school to become an attorney, to help with writing policy and helping corporations come back into a more holistic way of running the show, and anyone and anything else that just needs fine tuning. And as I help others, it helps me to evolve, because we're never done evolving. But here is when you can get kind of twisted when you think you're done evolving. And we're going to talk about the spiritual ego, because I've seen this a lot, and I will talk about it from my experience. No, I will not use names. And again, I'm not here to offend or call anybody out. I understand what it's like to identify with spiritual concepts, and in some sense, put some people on a pedestal that may not need to be on a pedestal, because we all are our own pedestals, straight up. So let's talk about the idea of the ego, because it's the ego that wants to create problems. And it's the ego that latches onto identities, objects, ideas, and whatever it can, even mental health disorders. Honestly, if you ever have felt anyone who overly identifies with their disorders, and I've met people like this too. Again, I'm not passing judgments. I mean, objectively speaking, we've all met someone who will chop it up to, well, it's because I have this. And I'm like, okay, if you say so. But it's the ego that likes to latch onto whatever it can. And part of the awakening process, truly the awakening process, or the concept of ego death, is to realize that you are none of these things. Anything that's going on out there is not you. It's not me. And I think that when it comes to spirituality, it's a really good stepping stone, especially if you're coming from trauma, coming from disempowerment, coming from a lack of self-worth, coming from judgment. Spirituality, spiritual concepts, or even religion can act as this for some people. but I'm speaking in terms of just spirituality. That could be a really good stepping stone off of where you were from. However, if it becomes a crutch to where now you're latching on to ideas, teachers, gurus, shamans who are in the spiritual space, then it just becomes another thing that the ego's identifying with. And if you are not catching yourself, then now to some degree, you're just picking up knowledge. Okay, you're accumulating all this knowledge. You'll find the next good book, you'll find the next good YouTube video, the next amazing teacher, and this is all wonderful. It's all great. But then it becomes a distraction from the internal work that needs to be done. For example, when it comes to psychedelics, because psychedelics can also be used as that distraction from actually doing the inner work. And there are people who will keep doing psychedelics, whether it's mushrooms, anything, but then they're not integrating. And the integration is the most important part. It's not necessarily about, drinking the medicine. I've seen this with people who have done ayahuasca, where they'll sit in with the medicine, get amazing downloads, have a profound experience, but then there's no integration afterwards. But there's still just this collecting of knowledge and then getting identified with the ego. And well, this way is the right way, and this interpretation is better than that interpretation, when everything is all being perceived through our own senses. And this is why it's important to tap into your own innate understanding of the isness, the being, the oneness, the divinity. This isn't separate from ego. Ego is just our physical personality construct. But behind that, behind all the thoughts, behind the beliefs, behind all the senses, there's the you. And spirituality can get you there, but there comes a point where you have to detach from that. You have to detach from anything and everything in order to come back to harmony. And that's what ancient wisdom is really about. And I'm still learning about ancient wisdom through different modalities. And this is part of my journey as well, is detaching from a lot of principles and teachers and gurus and whatnot, and really tapping into my own divinity, my own understanding of the universe. This does not mean that I will not teach these principles, but just know that at the very end of it, these are really awesome tools that'll get you to allow yourself to relax into your own innate power, to feel comfortable relying on only you, because there's only you. And I've had to learn the stripping of identities that were not me, stripping away beliefs, even positive beliefs, really, when I think about it, because all of that is just a perception, all of that's a projection. And for me to be a clear canvas or a clear vessel, I had to strip away even all of that in order to get to the divinity of the oneness that we truly are. And so it is the ego in these spiritual spaces. And I felt it. I with certain people where I'm coming to them with love, I have felt the judgment. I have felt like that stanky look of like, what is she doing? I felt all of this, even in these spaces where people profess unconditional love and what have you. But when you think about it, it's unconditional only if it plays by their spiritual understanding. So there's invalidation that goes on in these spaces rather than accepting everyone as they are. Doesn't mean that you have to run in the same groups, but when you accept everybody as they are, you're accepting them from a soul level, not from all these spiritual concepts and what they believe in, what they don't believe in. This is why I can have religious friends and I don't follow organized religion, but I see them for who they are. I see everybody for who they are. And it's really when we let go of the judgments of the mind, the judgments of the ego. And also, if you're judging, just know that if you're judging anybody, you're judging yourself. Straight up. Because if we're all part of that oneness, what you do unto another is actually what you're doing unto yourself. This is why it's important, one, to not take anything personal in terms of how someone is treating you or being, because know that it's a reflection of their own self. This is why I don't take it personal whenever someone does come to me and they're just like, like just giving me that, the look and the vibration of lack of love and judgment, even though they're in these spiritual spaces. This is why it's important to trust your own intuition, trust your judgment. Always be coachable, always be teachable, always be open to learning. Don't think you know it all, because you don't. And if you need that reality check, I'm giving you that right now. You don't know it all. I don't know it all. And that's what's fun about this journey. That's why in these episodes from the get-go, I've always said, thank you for having me a part of your journey and being a part of mine, because it is truly a journey. There's no rush. There's no rush. So I just wanted to just talk about that just a little bit. We'll definitely have to dive on in. Tell me what you think about that. But also, I'll go into more details sometime in the future about my spiritual awakening, more of what that entails, and of course, bringing more of these principles into this podcast so it can just start to help relax the ego, because that's the goal, is to relax the ego enough to be able to see that it can chill out. We don't need it as much as it thinks we need it. And that's going to help with the reprogramming, shifting, and opening up to more of ourself through our consciousness, through our oneness, through our divinity. We already are that, but it's how we've grown up. It's our society. And then in this new age of information, which is a powerful, powerful time to be alive, you do see how the ego is still playing out negatively in these spaces that are still distracting you from who you truly are. Thank you guys so much for allowing me to share a little bit about my journey, what got me to awaken into my spirituality, into the divine truth that I am and that I continue to grow into. It has been such a journey, and there are many takeaways that I hope you get from all of this, but just know that when you're experiencing a dark night of the soul, at your lowest point, that is the point of true alchemy. It's like, what are you going to do with that? Are you going to succumb to it, or are you going to rise from that? And rising doesn't mean to do anything dramatic, but just waking up the next day, right? Eating a healthy meal, going for a walk, because these are the things that I did that has created what you're seeing today in terms of like me being successful, at least as I define it, in terms of the business, in terms of going to law school and being the best version that I can of myself all the time, in terms of me not judging myself. Like, because I just don't judge myself. In terms of me living in a predominantly positive state the majority of the time and being able to help others come back into their state of being. That is technically always positive or neutral, but it's the stories and the conditionings and all these other things that we just keep distracting ourselves with that really clouds our sense of self and our sense of our truth as we define it. I'm always glad about getting into alignment with you guys, and thank you so much for letting me share my story, share about my spiritual awakening, share about the ego and how even I have experienced invalidation and lack of love in spiritual spaces. And this is why it's so important to really use your own inner compass, your intuition as your guide that's going to lead you to victory. Thank you guys, and always tune in to You Are Limitless because you're truly limitless, y'all. And share this, like this, follow me, subscribe, all these things, because I'm coming from a place of love, understanding, no judgment. And I'm here to just bring you guys guidance, and hopefully some of it lands, some of it resonates. If not, at the end of the day, my purpose is just to act according to my highest good as I define it, and bring forth what has helped me and many people that I work with come back into who they really are and letting go of the things that are not us. So if all of that sounds amazing, of course, reach out about one-on-one coaching. You can DM me at Madam Chiko on Instagram or with the links in the show notes. Just reach out. I am here for you. And also reach out if you want to be a part of my women's group that's going to be coming up here in a little bit. I will be releasing a date sometime soon. So reach out. Absolutely. I want to know more about you. I'm going to know more about your story and anything that we can do to get you to where you need to be in this moment. So thank you guys so much. And I will see y'all next week on You Are Limitless, y'all.